All right, he's one of Washington's most influential journalists, and his new approach to reporting could shape the way we all consume news in the digital age. In fact, our next guest was the founding father of Politico's playbook before launching Axios in 2017. Now, he and his co-founders at Axios, Jim Vandehei and Roy Schwartz, have co-authored a new book titled Smart Brevity, The Power of Saying More with Less. Mike Allen joins us now. Mike, good to see you.
Sean, thank you very much, and congratulations on building something new.
You know something about that. You've been at this journalism for decades. You were at the Fredericksburg Free Star, the Richmond Times-Dispatch, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time, the Washington Post. You were at Politico, obviously helped launch that, as I noticed. And then at Axios, you introduced us to this concept called Smart Brevity, basically writing more concisely, smarter. But I want to hone in on something you put on page 41 that I thought was interesting. You write, we studied Twitter, the New York Times, and academic literature on screen time and attention spans. Then we asked ourselves, if we were to build a media company based on what consumers want, not what journalists or ad sellers want, what would it be? And I thought about that for a moment in the context of today's environment where you have this decline in media outlets, especially at the local level. And I had to think to myself, is that a function of them simply not understanding how to write for consumers and sort of supply and demand, meeting consumers where they want?
Sean, that's very smart. And when you think about it, when you and I were young pups coming up in Washington, we were paid by the volume of words, right? At the Washington Post, I was more likely to get on the front page or the Sunday front page the longer the story was. You were always trying to get inside reporters' inboxes, and we did it by volume. But Sean, now that everything is digital, as you know in your own work, we have the data to see two things. One, that you have 20 seconds, maybe with any given piece of content, right? If I don't grab you with the subject line, if I don't grab you in the first few graphs or two, you're gone. The second part of it is, and this is the other thing about what consumers want, we teach the readers of Smart Brevity, we show them how to be heard, how to be more effective when they're communicating. And the secret there is that at best, someone's going to take away one idea from you. And so what Smart Brevity shows you is lean into that. Accept it's like gravity. One idea. Hone it, think about it, know what it is, and then, and this is the spoiler, this is the secret, just say it. Put it up top, say it clearly, and you will be heard.
I love the examples that you give in the book, Mike, but you talk about volume. I think about being a student in high school or college. It's all about getting a certain word count, right? Number of pages, we're all trying to get to that. It's not about being concise. So our whole lives, essentially, we're learning the wrong way. Do you think there should be a shift in the fundamentals of writing starting in grad school, or grade school, rather?
Yeah, no, great point. If they want to serve their students, absolutely. Because what we discovered is when you come out in business, when you're on your first job, when you're at the peak on your 8th job, no one shows you how to write a concise email or an effective email, right? Like it's just a lot of words. For the book, when Jim Vandehei, Roy Schwartz, and I delved into the data, when we looked at brain science, when we looked at eye scan tests, we found that again and again, there's proof that when we encounter a big block of text, a big glob of words, you're just going to skip over it. And so in Smart Brevity, we show you how to break that up, to use an architecture that starts with what's new, tell me something I don't know, always the gold standard. Why does it matter? That's our version of all politics is local. Why does it matter to me? Then maybe give an example, maybe give some data, give a chance to go deeper, but then stop. So fun fact, there are 28,002 words in this book, and that's because Workman, our publisher, who's been a great partner in this, told us that was the exact minimum number of words that they could put it between hardcovers, and you could get it on smartbrevity.com. But we could boil those 28,002 words down to just stop. And you're right about the papers. They don't ask you for one great idea. They ask you for 30 pages.
You know, I kept thinking about the book. There's one part in which you cite who this could be useful. You cite, corporations and organizations and students. And I kept thinking the United States Senate and every other politician could probably benefit from being smarter. But I want to ask you one last question, Mike. It was interesting. Your co-founder at Axios and your co-author of Smart Brevity, Jim Vandehei, after the 2020 elections, wrote a piece that was sort of critical, I think, of journalism. And I want to read the quote to the audience. He wrote, "The media remains fairly clueless about the America that exists outside of the big cities where most political writers and editors live. The coverage missed badly the surge in Trump voters in places obvious and less obvious." He's talking about rural Americas and heavy Hispanic areas like in Texas. So the question I have for you is, after you've gone through this whole iteration of founding Axios and writing this book, has anything in the media landscape changed? Have people learned from what Jim Vandehei posited back then?
Has changed very much too little. Sean, you know this better than anyone. Journalists are very good at talking. We're not so good at listening. And that's one of the messages of Smart Brevity. We tell people, don't type, think. Do the work on the front end for your audience. Figure out what you want them to know. And the same thing applies to journalists. We would be a lot better off listening across America rather than talking, assuming. It's why I am very intentional about, I live in Arlington, Virginia, but I make sure that I spend a good amount of my time elsewhere, because that's where you're going to find out what's happening. We used to tell young reporters there's no stories in the newsroom. Still true.
Good point.
Great advice. Mike Allen, so good to have you. Congratulations on the book. Everyone should read it. It's so helpful in being more concise. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me. And at smartbrevity.com, your viewers can get some data and some free tips and the book from independent booksellers, plus the big guys. So thank you very much for the conversation.
Amazing. All right, well, that is our show for this evening. But tomorrow, Senator Ron Johnson will be here with a message for Biden's Justice Department on their retaliation against FBI whistleblowers.
Yeah, and obviously, we're going to continue that Senate series that we've been doing all week. Thanks for being part of our company. Look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow.